Upon starting up Uncharted 3's campaign, I was expecting a scenario with lots of shooting, platforming, and running. What I got was Nathan Drake and Sully walking into a British pub trying to strike a deal with some lunatic with a jewelry obsession, which of course led to a disagreement and then into a bar brawl. From this point on, you are thrust into tight fisticuff scenarios that will help newcomers and veterans alike understand the fighting controls of Uncharted 3. Then, after exiting the bar, a series of cutscenes takes place that allows you to relive the moments of Nathan Drake's childhood on the streets of Cartagena, Colombia. From here on, the game focuses on young Drake as he comes across his soon-to-be father figure, Victor Sullivan, all the while exploring the museum for where his ancestors had allegedly left him valuable artifacts that, in the way you'd expect from an Indiana Jones film, contain the location to the Atlantis of the Sands, the lost city of Ubar. This just all seems way too familiar, like it was a story for Uncharted 2. Nathan Drake passes out after the first level, and through flashback sequences, we are shown just who these bad guys are, how Drake came to meet them, and the second level consists of a museum heist. I guess Naughty Dog thought that Uncharted 2's campaign was so perfect that they needed to rip it off, only take away the joy and originality that the last game had. The characters outside of Drake and Sully don't feel as likable or enticing as they did in the last games. It's like the developers just went out on a whim and said, okay, you know those characters that you liked so much from the previous games? Well, here they are completely void of enthusiasm. There was one likable character at the beginning whose sole purpose seems to provide comedic relief, seeing as how he was introduced to the series at the last minute, and his connections to Drake and his crew are unmentioned. They make a long-running gag of him being claustrophobic, which leads to funny moments, though he and Chloe Frazier disappear about a third of a way into the game. Also, to newcomers of the franchise, I strongly recommend playing either of the earlier games first. Uncharted 3 is undoubtedly the hardest game of the trilogy, and not only that, but it feels like you kind of need to play the first two games to understand the characters, as well as many references that they make throughout the game. Not only that, but some of the characters in this game don't seem to act the way you'd expect them to, and quite often say things that contradict their personalities. Man, I don't want to have to use this, Elena says as she looks down at the silenced pistol Drake gives her. Well, why the hell not? If anyone's played any of the first two Uncharted games, then they'd know that together Drake and Elena have killed more people than malaria. And just a few hours before this scene, she was completely fine with killing people with illegally bought shotguns. She even prompted Drake and Sully to buy them. So why the sudden change of heart? Did she magically grow some kind of conscience? Elena in this game must have split personality issues because she constantly says one thing then does another. Drake tells her not to follow him over a fence, and 5 minutes later, I'm trying to hop aboard an airplane, she appears out of nowhere with a Hummer to help me get onto it.
This is a million to one shot. When I almost lost you before, I just can't do that again. So take that Jeep over there and get the hell out of here, all right? While you can.
Girl. I got you, come on!
Hey! Deja vu, right?
Yeah.
Just get me up to the landing gear!
Okay.
What made the campaign feel ham-handed wasn't how repetitious it was of Drake's previous endeavors, or how it failed to deliver the great lifelike personalities that the characters had previously shown, but how it tried to top it at some points with gigantic set pieces that felt poorly placed, and to be honest, I actually thought that the game would benefit from not having them. Naughty Dog knows that undoubtedly their biggest accomplishment in Uncharted 2 was the train sequence. The train's physics affected the combat variety in that Drake was pushed along a one-way moving path with narrow corridors and needed to use the train's movement to his advantage. While this was undoubtedly impressive, what made it all the more so was how it fit with the story so well. In Uncharted 3, very reminiscent of Indiana Jones 3 and The Last Crusade, Drake is kidnapped and held hostage by pirates. They threaten him for information, then force him to undergo a strenuous routine that leads him to a gigantic cruiser miles out at sea. The ship's movement offers a wide variety of gunplay in that it's both exciting and challenging. One moment you could be shooting at hordes of bad guys from behind cover, and the next thing you know, the wave caused the ship to tilt in a direction that forced you to find a different cover spot as cargo crates move back and forth, keeping the action fresh and keeping you on your toes. It's a great technical achievement, definitely capable of rivaling the last game's train sequence. It's just a shame that this whole scenario couldn't have possibly made any less sense if it tried. While in previous Uncharted games the story and gameplay went well together hand in hand, here it just seems as though they could push you around wherever they felt like for the sake of saying our game has a gigantic sinking ship level in it. And also, just like The Last Crusade, Drake manages to swim back to shore without so much as a life preserver or any idea where he's headed. Sad to say, the story is this game's weakest element. While the previous two Uncharted games may have felt somewhat like Indiana Jones movies, they provided a fresh take on Lucas's beloved franchise by creating their own mythos. Here though, it seems as if the entire game's story is fused out of Uncharted 2's campaign and Indiana Jones 3. There's a section where Drake is being held hostage by pirates that I mentioned earlier. There's a scene in Drake's childhood where he reminisces about not having a father to be there for him. And then there's a scene where you recover a half a stone slab from the coffin of a dead knight and trace over it to complete the other half of the slab you don't have. There's a level where I'm on horseback chasing tanks in the middle of a desert towards the very end. You manage to escape from a collapsing temple on horseback just seconds before an earthquake totals it as you run off into the sunset.
guns? Please?
Nathan! Drake, we have got it! Come on! Are you worthy of
Elsa.
the name?
Elsa, don't move!
It's ours, Indy. Yours and mine.
Elsa, don't cross the seal. The Night warned us not to take the grail from here. Hurry, come here. You can't just let her die. Gary's here. Let's give her a goddamn hand. Elsa! Your other hand, honey, I can't hold you!
I can reach it. I can reach it.
Give me your hand, give me your other hand! Come here! Help me!
I guess Game Informer wasn't joking around on one of their April Fool's issues when they named the cover Uncharted 4 and the Raiders of the Lucasfilm Vault. Naughty Dog stole so much from Indiana Jones 3 that I'm surprised that the cover doesn't look like this. Thankfully though, while the story may not be very impressive, from an action set piece level this game is incredible. The platforming has received much more polish, and Naughty Dog has taken to heart the complaints they received about being too difficult to differentiate between what you can grab onto and what's just part of the background. Cover mechanics have also been improved. It's now much easier to move from cover to cover without so much hassle. Drake no longer requires you to rapidly press the O button to get out of cover, and because of this, getting behind cover feels more natural. Even after 10 years, the gameplay still feels as rock solid as ever, and Naughty Dog spared no expense perfectly transitioning it over to the multiplayer.
Treasure has been dropped. Go get it.
Multiplayer is great. You have over a dozen modes to choose from, each of them requiring a certain level of skill. Team deathmatch is as you'd expect, whereas co-op survival and co-op campaign are hard as diamonds. All the faults from the single player experience are easy to overlook here since everyone is held to the same crutch that I mentioned in the campaign, so it evens itself out. The maps are robust and colorful and will give players a reason to keep on their toes constantly. Instead of kill streaks like in Call of Duty, you are given medals. You get medals for doing pretty much anything. Whether it be killing a certain amount of players or just surviving for long amounts of time, once you've collected enough medals, a kickback becomes available. Depending on how high your rank is, which you increase by scoring points, more kickbacks become unlocked. A kickback could be anything from spawning an RPG out of thin air to giving you the ability to run faster for a limited amount of time to turning into an infestation of scarabs to eat your enemies alive. The best part of all of this is that you get to keep your medals even after you die, So if you wanted to spawn an RPG that takes 7 medals and somebody killed you with 6, you wouldn't have to worry about it. A much better mechanic than kill streaks, in my opinion. Just to make sure that new players get a chance to raise their status as well, Naughty Dog included a bare-bones gameplay mode that takes away all metal kickbacks and guns that can only be unlocked at higher levels, giving everyone only the basics of equipment, so even novice players have a chance to be higher-ranking professionals. This is undoubtedly one of the best multiplayer games on PlayStation 3. My only nitpick with the kickbacks though would be that weapon kickbacks take the place of whatever gun is in your primary weapons holster. In games like Call of Duty 4, you are given 2 weapons to hold plus a perk that you can use without taking up 1 or 2 of your weapon slots. Here, the metal kickbacks take up the space of one of your guns. Why couldn't it have been separate from the other 2 guns and used as a 3rd weapon? It's all because of that stupid 2-weapon limit. I hope that someday developers will stop sacrificing fun for realism. As far as the game's visuals go, since when has Naughty Dog ever settled for anything less than the best? At the time, this was the best looking game on any system in my opinion. The topology in this game is incredibly realistic. That, accompanied by the way Drake interacts with his environment, makes this one of the most jaw-dropping spectacles to ever be accomplished in games back in 2011. It also runs at 60 frames per second, and I never once had a problem with it slowing down.